In the vast, frozen stretches of the Arctic, where the brilliant glare of the endless ice meets the quiet despair of the long polar night, a young polar bear cub, barely 1 or 2 years old and only recently weaned from its mother's nurturing warmth, began to suffer from nightmares that blurred the line between dream and dread. At first, the cub's nights were filled with fleeting images of its surroundings, dancing northern lights, the soft crunch of snow underfoot, and the steady, reassuring presence of its mother. But as the weeks wore on, the dreams grew darker and more insistent. In the cub's sleep, a gaunt figure, thin and twisted like a specter from a forgotten legend, lurked at the edges of its vision. This phantom, with unnaturally sharp teeth and a gaze that burned like red embers in the darkness, was unmistakably the Wendigo, a creature born of ancient curses and boundless hunger for the weak. By day, the cub grew restless and fragile. Its appetite waned as if the taste of sustenance had lost its meaning. And it would often startle awake from fitful slumbers, trembling and alone in a world that no longer seemed kind. Odd, inexplicable marks soon began to appear along its delicate fur, shallow, jagged scratches that did not seem to have been inflicted by physical attack, but rather appeared as if etched by some unseen, malevolent force. The mother bear, strong and resolute through countless winters, noticed these signs with growing concern, though she had little patience for what she dismissed as mere dreaming. The persistent agitation of her cub could not be overlooked. The cub's once playful eyes were clouded now by fear and fatigue, and its body, supple and full of youthful strength, began to droop under the weight of an intangible curse. Driven by a primal instinct and the weight of ancient lore passed silently from one generation to the next, the mother bear sensed that something was deeply amiss. She recalled old stories, whispered amongst the elders of her kind, of a sacred land where spiritual forces converged, a place where the ancient powers that once sealed away malevolent spirits could be found. With a heaviness in her heart born of both maternal love and a deep, instinctual understanding, she gathered her ailing cub close and set off on a desperate journey across an endless, unforgiving expanse of ice. Their path was fraught with perils that transcended physical obstacles. The mother and cub navigated vast fields of shimmering white where the ice was brittle and the wind carried voices that seemed to echo with the sorrow of ages past. They braved sudden, blinding blizzards that whisked them away from the familiar and into the realm of myth. In these harsh, sunlit hours, the Arctic sky glowing with an almost surreal brilliance against the stark whiteness below, the cub's troubled dreams continued to haunt it. Even as it huddled against its mother for warmth and safety, the images of the gaunt Wendigo, ever persistent, invaded its every slumber. In quiet moments, when the wind subsided and the ice lay in still, crystalline expanse, the mother bear would stop and tilt her massive head as if listening. There was an unspoken conversation between the two, a language of instinct and soul that needed no words. The cub would gaze into its mother's eyes, seeking reassurance, while she conveyed through subtle gestures that a path to healing lay ahead. That path, as the old rhythms of nature dictated, led them to an ancient ice cave known among the elders as a place of purification, a hallowed sanctuary where the spirits of the ancestors were believed to dwell in silent vigil. The journey to the cave was a test of endurance and spirit. Mother and cub pressed onward, carefully treading over rifts in the ice, skirting around jagged formations, and evading the perils of turbulent whitecaps and shifting ice flows. Along the way, they even encountered the occasional sign of human presence, remnants of temporary camps left by researchers and explorers. Yet these did little to distract from the true threat that lurked within the cub's recurring nightmares. For in the depths of its slumber, the Wendigo's spectral essence was beginning to coalesce. The nightmares grew more vivid by the day. In its dreams, the cub would see the ghostly figure follow it relentlessly through corridors of darkness, its skeletal hands reaching out to seize control of its trembling form. There were nights when the cub, overcome by these terrors, wandered helplessly away from its mother into the depths of the ice, only to be rescued at the very last moment by the strong, assuring presence of the mother bear. At last, after days of arduous travel across a barren, yet strangely luminous frozen wasteland, the pair arrived at the entrance of the ancient ice cave. Its surface, weathered by millennia and adorned with mystical carvings left by a long-forgotten indigenous people, shimmered in the pure light of the Arctic day. Here, in the quiet sanctity of this natural cathedral, the mother bear sensed that the time had come to confront the lingering darkness embedded in her cub's troubled soul. The cave's interior was alive with a subtle energy, a cool, yet palpable force that pulsed with the heartbeat of the ancient world. It was as if the very walls of the cave murmured secrets of healing, of rituals performed in ages past to cleanse the spirit and renew the bond between living creatures and the sacred forces that governed the wilderness. Inside that hallowed space, the air felt different, almost charged with a sacred purpose. Mother and cub settled quietly upon a bed of frost, the silence enveloping them in a protective embrace. The cub, still shaking from the nightmares that had plagued its sleep, looked up at its mother with eyes that flickered with both terror and a flicker of hope. The mother bear, drawing on the deep, ancestral memory that had always guided her, began a ritual of healing, a series of gentle, instinctive actions passed down through generations. In a language older than words, she circled around her cub, nuzzled it, and pressed her massive head close to its trembling form. The cave's ancient energy seemed to intensify around them, the light from fractured ice dancing along the walls in ethereal patterns, and the quiet echo of unseen ancestors resonated in each breath. Then came the moment of confrontation. The cub's nightmares surged violently even as it lay wrapped in its mother's protective embrace. In the deepest recesses of the cave, shrouded in an almost imperceptible haze, the gaunt form of the Wendigo materialized. Its presence was subtle at first, a cold shiver that crept along the back, a faint rasping sound that mimicked the whisper of the wind. But as the cub's terror peaked, the ghostly specter of the Wendigo began to press in with malevolent intent. The creature's eyes, hollow and burning with an eerie red, flickered into the cub's mind, as if trying to seize control. The cub convulsed, its small body twisting as if in a battle between its innocent, fragile self and the overwhelming force of the nightmare that sought to claim it. For a heart-stopping moment, the cave seemed to shrink around them, its frozen walls echoing with the primal struggle unfolding in the silence. The mother bear roared, a deep, pained sound that reverberated through the cavernous space, channeling every ounce of her strength and ancestral power. With a furious determination born of both love and the sacred duty to protect, she lunged toward the encroaching darkness, her enormous frame battered against the spectral force as if trying to physically repel the ethereal intruder from the tender soul of her cub. A profound, almost supernatural energy began to surge within the heart of the cave. The ancient relics carved into the walls, the totems of forefathers whose spirits were woven into every grain of the ice, seemed to pulse with light. In that moment, the mother bear, through instinct and an almost mystical understanding, pressed her own strength into the force of the cave. The entire space vibrated with the power of old ritual as the sacred energy poured forth in dazzling streams of icy luminescence. It bathed the trembling cub and its determined mother in an otherworldly glow, a radiance potent enough to challenge the malevolent force that had invaded their dreams. The Wendigo, caught in the torrent of purifying energy, shrieked in a sound that was at once agonizing and futile. The combined might of the ancient cave and the fierce protectiveness of the mother bear began to overwhelm the dark presence. The ghostly figure flared and convulsed before slowly receding, its form dissipating into wisps of cold, shadow-like mist. For a brief, agonizing moment, the cub's eyes flickered, the terror lingering there gave way to a momentary clarity. As if the nightmare's grip was loosening. The sacred energy, however, did not come without a cost. The cub trembled violently, its small frame exhausted by the mental and physical onslaught, while the mother bear's powerful form sagged with the effort of channeling such ancient might. After what seemed an eternity of tumult and heart-wrenching struggle, the cave's radiant power finally prevailed. The ghost of the Wendigo, its dark essence forced into retreat, melted into the cold silence of the frozen sanctuary. In its place remained only the lingering question, a haunting echo that whispered in the cub's troubled dreams. Had the curse been truly banished? Or was it merely lying in wait, biding its time to return once more? In the quiet that followed, the mother bear drew her weary cub close, allowing the soft, healing luminescence of the cave to envelop them. In that tender, fragile hour. As the scarred spirit of night slowly dissolved into hopeful dawn, the cub began a slow, painful recovery. Its weak body trembled less in fear, though its eyes occasionally darted about in the silent panic of remembered nightmares. The bond between the mother and cub, forged in the crucible of horror and fortified by the mystic power of a sacred rite, now shone brighter than ever, a silent promise that even in the face of ancient curses, love and natural wisdom endure. Together, they left the hallowed ice cave and ventured back into the wide, luminous expanse of the Arctic landscape. The journey home was marked by a tentative optimism, a fragile hope kindled in every cautious step along the pristine ice. Yet, even as time brought physical recovery and a slow return to normalcy, an undercurrent of unease remained. The young cub, though now visibly stronger and more resilient, still bore the spectral weight of its nightmares. In the stillness of its sleep, half-remembered visions of a gaunt, menacing figure and the cold terror of near possession haunted its dreams. And in its eyes, when it stared too long into the endless white, there flickered a shadow of doubt, a subtle, unspoken fear that the Wendigo had not been vanquished forever but had merely retreated into the depths, waiting for another chance to emerge. In the aftermath of that fateful night, the mother bear, ever watchful and nurturing, remained a steadfast guardian. She roamed the familiar ice fields with a quiet vigilance, her instincts honed by both experience and the enduring whispers of ancestral memory. Her daily routines took on a new significance, a continuous, silent ritual of love and protection against an ever-looming threat. And though the immediate terror had passed, the scars of that night, and the unresolved question of the Wendigo's fate, wove themselves into the fabric of their lives. An eternal reminder of nature's raw duality, the beauty and benevolence that sustain life, and the lurking, eternal darkness that challenges it. Thus, beneath a sky that shimmered with the pale gold of morning and the lingering glow of the receding night, the story of the young cub and its haunted dreams closed one chapter even as it hinted at what might yet come. In the quiet union of mother and child, in each measured, tender step on the endless ice, lay the promise that while ancient curses might echo in the realm of dreams, the strength of love and the sacred bond between nature and its creatures offer a beacon of hope, a reminder that even in the coldest, darkest nights, there is an enduring light that guides them home. For several long days the mother bear and her ailing cub trekked away from the familiar stretches of their territory, leaving behind the only home they had ever known in order to reach the sacred ice fields spoken of in the hushed lore of their people. The journey was arduous, etched with every hardship that the merciless polar realm could conjure, blinding blizzards that turned the world into a swirling storm of white chaos. Vast plains of ice so thin in places they threatened to shatter underfoot. And the lurking menace of predators that, while not directly linked to the cub's torment, served as constant reminders of life's relentless struggle in the wild. The cub's once bright eyes had grown haunted, clouded by nightmares that invaded every trembling sleep. In those dreams, a gaunt, skeletal figure with razor-sharp teeth and a gaze that burned like infernal embers tormented it relentlessly. It was no longer merely an apparition limited to slumber, with each passing day. The pall of that cursed presence seemed to seep into the cub's very flesh. Small, inexplicable scratches began to mar its soft fur, marks that could not have been made by any natural predator but that appeared as if etched by an unseen, malignant force. The mother bear, attuned to the rhythms of her offspring's body and spirit, recognized these signs with mounting sorrow and determination. Though she had once dismissed her cub's frenzied night terrors as the overactive imaginings of youth, now they struck her heart with the clarity of a profound omen, a warning that something ancient and evil was at work. Guided by instinct and old memories imparted by her ancestors, the mother bear led her precious cub through a stark, forbidding expanse where the sky stretched in endless blue and the land was a tapestry of glittering ice and shadow. Along this relentless route, she navigated labyrinthine networks of frozen ridges and desolate crevices, moving stealthily to avoid the violent howls of sudden snowstorms, which seemed to echo with voices of the past. Every step was fraught with danger. Not only did they face the threat of being torn apart by the merciless environment, but there was also the constant risk of stumbling into human traps, occasions when poachers or researchers with little regard for the ancient spirits might roam these lands. The journey grew ever more perilous as the pair neared the legendary ice cave, a place of renown among the indigenous creatures and whispered about in the lullabies of the old ones. This cave was said to be a sanctuary imbued with sacred energy, a natural vault where the spirits of ancestors lingered in eternal vigil. It was believed that within its crystalline corridors, the forces that once sealed away dark entities remained potent, capable of cleansing even the most deeply insidious curses. With each tentative step, the mother bear felt a quiet stirring in the wind, a promise, or perhaps a warning, that the boundaries between the seen and the unseen were thinnest in this place. As the snow underfoot began to shimmer with an almost supernatural luminescence beneath the rising sun, the duo finally emerged before the yawning entrance of the ancient cave. Massive and time-worn, its icy facade was carved by the relentless passage of millennia. Ancient symbols, faded but still palpable with power, were etched deep into its frozen walls. The very air here was charged with a serene, almost sacred energy, a hush that seemed to invite both reverence and fear. The mother bear paused, her heart swelling with both hope and trepidation. She sensed that the energies contained within these hallowed depths might be the only means to free her cub of the creeping darkness that had long plagued its dreams. Inside the cave, the light filtered through the crystalline formations, scattering prisms of color across smooth, undisturbed ice. The atmosphere was otherworldly, every sound was softened, every movement magnified in the stillness that pervaded this ancient sanctuary. As the pair settled upon a natural pedestal of frost, the mother bear gently nudged her cub, encouraging it to rest while she silently surveyed the cavern. In that quiet interlude, the oppressive weight of the cub's nightmares seemed to lift slightly, replaced by the chilly calm of a place where time itself was suspended. Yet even as the cave exuded an aura of safety, the specter of the Wendigo pressed at the edges of their consciousness like a dark whisper, its presence merging with the cavern's chill in a manner that set both hearts racing with both fear and fierce hope. That night, under the pale, unwavering glow of the Arctic moon, the cub's terror escalated. As slumber reclaimed its fragile form, horrific visions intensified. There were moments when the cub's eyes shone with an eerie, unnatural light, as if the cursed spirit was seeping through the veil of sleep, inching its way into the very core of its being. The Wendigo, once only an insidious shadow in the dark corridors of dreams, began to assert itself with a palpable force. In the midst of a deep and trembling sleep, the cub would suddenly jerk awake, its small body convulsing as though locked in a silent struggle with a presence far stronger than it could bear. The mother bear, though deeply pained by each cry of distress, remained steadfast, her instincts urging her to shield her young one from the rising tide of malevolence. Throughout that prolonged night, the ancient energies within the cave stirred restlessly, as if empathizing with the duo's plight. A soft, pulsating glow emanated from deep within the chamber, coalescing around the intricate ice carvings on the walls, symbols of long-forgotten rites and the power of ancestral spirits. The gentle radiance was both comforting and commanding, as if the cave itself were awakening to the purpose for which it had been created. Under its influence, the mother bear moved with a deliberate, almost ritualistic pace. She circled her cub repeatedly, her low, rumbling growls resonating through the stillness, as if calling upon forces older than the ice itself. In that solitary vigil, the ambient energy of the cave gathered like a tangible presence, ready to contest the invasive force of the Wendigo. It was then, in that critical moment of heightened sensation and frozen anticipation, that the boundary between nightmare and reality began to blur. The cub's eyes, wide and haunted in the half-light of the cavern, flickered with an almost imperceptible shimmer, a sign that the Wendigo was not content merely to haunt its dreams, but was poised to overtake the very vessel of its existence. In a sudden, heart-wrenching moment of visceral horror, the spectral figure of the Wendigo materialized at the edge of the cub's consciousness. Pale and gaunt, with teeth glinting like shards of broken ice and eyes burning with otherworldly fury, it reached out with shadowy tendrils that seemed to strangle the very light in the cave. In that perilous instant, the mother bear's maternal fury erupted like a supernova amid the oppressive cold. With a tremendous roar that tore through the fragile silence, she charged toward the encroaching darkness, her massive form unyielding despite the creeping ache of exhaustion and the scars of countless winters. Her roars, imbued with the raw power of ancient memory and searing love, reverberated across the icy chamber. It was as if every heartbeat, every echo of her ancestors' whispered incantations, surged into that single, defining moment of defiance. The sacred energy of the cave, long dormant and waiting for this very hour, responded in kind. A soft luminescence gathered at the center of the cavern, coalescing in streams of shimmering blue and white that flowed like living water across the frozen floor. This ethereal radiance, imbued with the power of ancestral rites and the natural order of the land, began to swirl around the mother bear and her trembling cub. With its gentle, cleansing touch, it formed an unseen barrier against the spectral intruder. The ancient symbols on the cave walls pulsed and glowed in silent testimony to a covenant forged long ago between the living and the spirits of the wild. As the spectral tendrils of the Wendigo reached out in a final, desperate bid to seize the cub, the cave's pure, hallowed energy surged forth. In a moment of breathtaking intensity, the radiant force enveloped the pair, bathing them in an otherworldly light that seemed to push back the darkness. The Wendigo's claws, once poised to invade and possess, recoiled as the purity of the ancient rite bore down upon them. For what felt like an eternity, the cavern seemed suspended between contrasting forces, one of malevolent hunger and the other of a love as vast and ancient as the ice itself. Finally, with a haunting, agonized cry, the spectral menace began to dissolve into tendrils of icy mist, retreating slowly into the obscure recesses of the cave as if banished, for now. When the glow of the sacred energy subsided, the cavern returned to a tentative quiet. The cub, its small frame shuddering from both the trauma of the encounter and the overwhelming surge of healing energy, slowly opened its eyes. There was in them a dawning clarity, a fragile, tentative respite from the ever-haunting nightmares that had once threatened to consume it entirely. The mother bear pressed her head tenderly against its flank, her deep, sorrowful eyes conveying silent reassurances that the immediate threat had been repelled. Yet, in the lingering silence, a question remained unspoken. Was the malevolent spirit of the Wendigo truly vanquished? Or had it only receded to bide its time until it might seize control once more? With heavy hearts, but with a newfound determination forged in the crucible of that fateful night, the pair left the sanctified refuge of the ancient ice cave. Their journey back across the endless, shimmering plains was marked by cautious steps and glances cast toward the dark corners of the horizon, where shadows still lurked with the potential to awaken old nightmares. The mother bear carried her cub with unwavering resolve, each laborious step a silent vow to protect and nurture, even as the specter of recurring terror whispered softly in the recesses of the little one's mind. As they traveled homeward beneath the stark, brilliant light of the Arctic day, the scars of that terrible night slowly began to fade, not entirely erased, but transformed into quiet marks of remembrance and hard-won wisdom. The cub, now gradually regaining strength, still bore the subtle tremor of memories that it could neither forget nor fully overcome. Its eyes, at times distant and wary, spoke of the lingering shadow of the Wendigo, a reminder that some ancient curses, even when dispelled, may choose to retreat into the background of the soul, waiting for their moment to resurface. Thus, as the mother bear and her young cub disappeared into the vast whiteness of the recovering tundra, a bittersweet legacy was left behind, a legacy woven into the fabric of the frozen land and carried in the quiet, solemn prayers of all who understood the sacred balance between light and dark. Their journey was far from over, for every step taken in that endless expanse was both a testament to nature's capacity to heal and a warning that even the purest of souls might one day face the haunting return of an ancient evil. In the waning hours before dawn, when the Arctic skies softened from a deep indigo into tentative blushes of early light, the mother bear and her young cub began the long, tentative trek away from the sacred ice cave. Their emergence into the vast, unyielding expanse of a crystalline tundra was muted and poignant, a farewell to the hallowed sanctuary where ancient energies had clashed with the dark presence of the Wendigo. Every step the pair took was accompanied by a heavy silence, an echo of the battle waged within the cavern's chill, where dreams had nearly been devoured and sorrow had etched itself into fragile fur. As they moved across the sprawling white desert, The mother bear led her cub with a deliberate caution born of instinct and memory. The cub's eyes, though growing stronger with each laborious step, still held the pale remnants of terror, a reflection of nights filled with shifting shadows and the relentless grip of nightmares. The tender marks on its fur, subtle scars that seemed to trace the very outline of its inner turmoil, were constant, silent witnesses to the ordeal it had undergone. And yet, amid that wounded vulnerability, there was an undeniable glow, a spark of resilience kindled by the mother's unwavering protection and the sacred rite performed in the cavern's luminous heart. The journey home was not without its trials. With the freshly awakened sun casting elongated shadows upon the ice, the pair encountered crevasses that yawned like the mouths of ancient abysses and winds that threatened to disorient them with their mournful wails. But each obstacle was met with a determination that transcended their physical limitations. The mother bear, drawing on reserves of inner strength that had been honed over countless winters, positioned herself constantly between her cub and any hint of lurking danger. Her every glance was a silent reassurance, a promise that no matter how persistent the echoes of the cursed Wendigo might be, she would fight to shield her offspring from its reach. Along the icy trails, remnants of their passage were etched in the ever-changing landscape. Footprints, a delicate pattern of padding and claws, intermingled with small patches of disturbed snow that bore hints of old blood and the faint, ghostly imprint of a spectral hand. The tundra, vast and indifferent, absorbed these traces as if it were an ancient ledger keeping score of all that had transpired. Yet even as the land recorded these transient histories, it also offered moments of transcendence. In the quiet expanse where the horizon met a clear, pale sky, the pair would sometimes pause to watch the sun rise, its diffused, golden light spreading slowly over the ice, as if promising redemption after dark, harrowing nights. During these moments of quiet reflection, the cub's eyes, now more alert yet still tempered by the memories of its torment, would occasionally dart toward the unseen edges of the vista, as if expecting the specter of the Wendigo to manifest once more. Its breathing, though shallower than before, trembled with an inherited wariness, a cautious hope that the curse had been diminished rather than entirely vanquished. The mother bear too was not free from that foreboding. She had learned from the ancient energies in the cave that some forces, however repelled, might simply lie dormant, waiting for a moment of weakness. And so, as they pressed on, every subtle creak of the ice and every sudden shift in the wind was met with vigilant ears and determined hearts. As the journey carried them farther from the sanctified cave and deeper into the familiar territories of their ancestral lands, signs of the old ways began to emerge in subtle ways, along frozen riverbanks and in the reflections caught on smooth ice surfaces. The silhouettes of ancient totems, carvings and symbols left by long-forgotten tribes, appeared as gentle reminders that these lands were hallowed. These markers, weathered by time yet imbued with an unmistakable aura of the sacred, lent solace to the weary pair. They spoke silently of a past when nature and spirit were not at odds with human ambition, but lived in an accord that sustained all life. In the fullness of the new day, as the Arctic thaw began to hint at a season of renewal, the mother bear and her cub finally reached the threshold of their long-remembered territory. Here, in a secluded glen bordered by stately birch and evergreen trees that shone brightly under the clear blue sky, the pair found temporary sanctuary. The glen was a place of quiet magic, a subtle interplay of light and shade, where the rustle of gentle breezes through the leaves mingled with the soft murmur of a nearby stream. In this serene haven, far removed from the spectral terrors that had plagued them, the cub finally allowed itself to rest, its eyes slowly closing in a state of cautious recovery. The mother bear remained ever watchful, her gaze scanning the periphery with a blend of maternal instinct and deep-seated knowledge of the land's secrets. She knew that the nightmares might never fully disappear, that in a world where the forces of darkness and light danced in a delicate, eternal balance, the remnants of the Wendigo's curse might one day return. Yet for now, the immediate threat was at bay, and all that remained was the quiet, persistent hope of healing. Each gentle breath, each measured step taken across the glen, was a testament to the resilience of life, to the enduring bond between a mother and her cub, a bond that had withstood the ravages of ancient terror and emerged unbroken. though forever marked by the memories of what had come before. In the soft light of the afternoon, as the cub began to move with new strength and its wary eyes gradually lost some of the haunted glimmer of past terrors, the mother bear sensed a subtle shift, a deep, almost imperceptible change in the atmosphere that spoke of both healing and warning. A quiet wind, carrying the faint, sweet scent of thawing earth and distant wildflowers, rustled through the glen, almost as if nature itself were whispering that the curse had been held at bay but not entirely eradicated. The cub's dreams, while now less frequent and less vivid, still sometimes flickered with the specter of the gaunt Wendigo, a reminder that the darkness might one day stir again if forgotten. In the days and weeks that followed, life in the glen resumed its cyclic rhythm. The indigenous rhythms of the land, silent, enduring, and steeped in ancient wisdom, guided the recovery of the cub. It learned, through play and careful observation, to reclaim the joy of simple existence, the thrill of chasing the shimmering reflections on a frozen pond, the gentle warmth of sunlight on its fur, and the reassuring presence of its mother who remained its vigilant guardian. The glen, with its quiet promise of renewal, became a living canvas upon which the scars of past horrors slowly faded into pale, yet lasting, memory. Yet, amidst this gradual return to peace, a question lingered in the soft edges of every shimmering dream. Was the dark specter of the Wendigo truly vanquished? Or merely lying dormant, like a slow heartbeat waiting to surge again in the cold of another night? As the cub lay down to sleep beneath a sky scattered with the soft glow of stars, its dreams were no longer filled solely with terror. There were moments, brief and fragile as the frost on morning grass, when visions of a gentle, radiant light mingled with the fading images of the dark curse, a sign that the eternal battle between light and shadow was far from over, but that each victory was measured in hard-won glimmers of hope. In that ambiguous twilight between waking and dreaming, where every memory and every nightmare converged into a single, delicate thread of life, the mother bear remained steadfast, a silent pillar of protection and resolve. Her eyes, deep and knowing, bore the weight of countless seasons of struggle and triumph, a living reminder that in the harsh, unyielding realm of the Arctic, only the bond of love and the fierce loyalty of kinship could truly bridge the gap between a haunted past and a hopeful future. Thus, as the day melted gradually into a cool, clear night, the saga of the cub's haunted dreams and its mother's unyielding guardianship reached a quiet, poignant conclusion. The glen, now bathed in the gentle luminescence of the northern lights, stood as a testament to both the scars of ancient curses and the resilient, tender power of love that could soothe even the deepest wounds. The mother bear and her cub, though forever marked by the echoes of nightmares that had once threatened to claim their very souls, moved forward into each new day with the promise that as long as they remained together, there would always be a spark of light to dispel the lingering darkness. In the final measure of this timeless story, the question remained, a soft, lingering whisper carried on the wind, whether the curse of the Wendigo had been sealed away for good, or if it slumbered beneath the surface of every dream, waiting for the inevitable moment to reawaken. That question, like the ever-shifting patterns of the Arctic ice, was destined to remain an unsolved enigma, a reminder that nature's mysteries are as eternal as they are unyielding. And so, the story of the haunted cub and its devoted mother became part of the land's ancient lore, a living legend that would be passed down through the ages as both a cautionary tale and a tribute to the enduring, indomitable spirit of life in even the coldest, darkest of nights.